Hi everyone, I hope you're having a beautiful day. I wasn't going to post a video this evening, but I felt this was really important to share. And the video that I'm going to share is a live chat that happened yesterday by Will Barney, who works for Enoch Global Services. There was a live chat, I'm not sure which Telegram group. I wish I knew it was that actually happened yesterday, but JR kindly shared it on my Telegram page, Divine Harmony. You're going to find it really interesting because he talks about the currency revaluation, Iraq, um, humanitarian projects, the redemption process, quite a lot of information there. First of all, this is for entertainment purposes only because all this information is not known to the world. One thing that I found really interesting is that, from what I remember through the chat today that I was listening to, it was going to be really delicate, after the currency revaluation for the people that are still asleep, because once they find out about that, how come they weren't aware of that? They may retaliate towards the government of their country. So, yeah, so I think that's going to be a big issue in the future. But, when people retaliate, especially our family and friends, we just say, well, publicly, Trump had already announced currencies will be 1 to 1. Anyway, he talks about the RV, NDA, or the NDA thing's really interesting. So if you're receiving quite a lot of money, especially from the ZIN, you'll be looking at an NDA for life. But basically, he said NDA meaning to not reveal where you got the money from. I think you can chat about. I'm not sure about chatting about the money, but I think you have to be aware. Um, just just wait until hopefully we get our notifications soon. But just be aware we may have an NDA, as Will said, for life. So I'll share this audio and hope you have a lovely weekend. And if you have I think we've got a anniversary holiday in New Zealand on Monday. So if any of you are on a holiday on Monday, have a beautiful weekend. And then I'll just share this with you all.
A lot of crazy stuff going on in the world right now. And like I said, a lot of misinformation and disinformation. So we appreciate you coming on, sharing your information, and be able to tell us a little bit about who you are, what your organization does, and what you're planning on doing in the future. Because when I heard that, that was very encouraging to this group, since we are humanitarians changing the world. And that ties right in with what your organization is planning on doing in the future. So if you could just start there and tell us a little bit about yourself, your group, your organization, and then we'll just open it up for question and answers, if that's okay.
Sure, that sounds great. So I'll give you the 50,000-foot view. We'll start there. I'm a former banker. I jokingly call myself a recovering banker because when you find out, as I did, the cesspool that is that world, you just can't do it anymore. So there was a time when I left banking for good without any desire to return. And that was when I became aware of a lot of the weird stuff that's going on in terms of the system they've created and how it's basically enslaved the world, how it's rigged in their favor. People jokingly talk about the casino, how the house never loses, right? Well, it's the same way with banking. And it's not really in the favor of anybody else. And they structure this in such a way that you need to put your money in their bank. You need to use their bank to move that money, whether you receive it or send it. And this way they get paid on everything you do. In addition to that, the central banks get involved with taking some of your income through tax agencies like the IRS or the CRA if you're in Canada. It's all the same system. There's 180 plus countries that have this same system. They use different terms, different names, but the system is the same. So with that in mind, this goes back almost 2 decades ago now. when I decided that I'd had enough of that and I wanted to do something else. So we got started in humanitarian projects and getting those prepped and ready to go. And then we began looking for additional sources of income or revenue that could support those humanitarian projects. And that led me down a rabbit hole when some friends said that, did I know anything about historical bonds? Of course, I didn't at that time, but I had quite a Rolodex. So it didn't take many phone calls, found somebody that did. And before long, we went down a rabbit hole of historical bonds. And long story short, I ended up having some unique conversations with the Asian elders and people involved in actually funding the revaluation of currencies and bonds and why that's all come about. I actually went into some of that history just recently on the Upfront in the Prophetic channel. If you want to check that out, I did an interview with them and we discussed a lot of that history. I don't have time to replay that tonight, but to be honest, the events that are taking place today didn't just happen, and they didn't just begin 20 years ago. They began a long time ago to be put into place for this to take place. And we've had the Q movement going on even before JFK, many things that started with JFK, but Q actually began after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln and has been going on ever since. So it's been a long fought battle to regain freedom from the clutches of financial tyranny. And it's taken many decades and a long time to get here. So things that we'll discuss tonight are what is real about changes going on, maybe what isn't real, and why certain things need to take place for this event to happen. Because when you understand what needs to be in place before the event happens, you stop listening to the messages telling you it's next Tuesday. You know, last Thursday they said it was today, and here it is Tuesday, and it's 8:13 p.m. on East Coast, and it still hasn't happened. And I remember getting a email from a friend on Friday. Hey, what do you think about this update saying this is going to happen on Tuesday? He said it's all yes, unfortunately. And maybe before we get into your questions, let me just give just some basic generalities about the revaluation process, because is it okay, Desiree? Am I under the understanding that everybody here kind of understands what the RV is, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. So very good. So the revaluation of currencies came about when the world was so indebted, it had no way out itself. The reason that there's Asian elder families getting involved is because they're the only ones left with money that can actually bail out the world. And they've done this once before. They did this 100 plus years ago because they were the ones that financed the Industrial Revolution, which included all the railroads across many of the nations, bridges, highways, freeway systems, even the central banks. They were involved in funding those entities, and they were supposed to be repaid for all that they had done no later than September 11th, 2001, which was the date Nasara was supposed to kick in. As all of us know, different events occurred that day, and there was no Nasara announced, and there was no repayment of any of the debts. And instead, we were launched into war, which was a cover to hide the fact that we were supposed to be in a reset. So for those in the U.S., that date is burned into your memory because it looked like we were attacked. And we were attacked, but not from without, but from within. And the people that were involved in that were actually involved in running our government. People like George Bush and Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, they were all in on it. They knew what was going on. In fact, the day before 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld said on live TV that the Pentagon was missing over $2 trillion, 2.3 trillion, I believe the number was, and they didn't know where it was. The following day, which ended up being 9/11, he was supposed to go to Congress and actually give an accounting as to where is it. And of course, none of that happened. The bonds were supposed to be repaid on that day, paying back this family that had funded the Industrial Revolution for all of the bonds that they were holding. Many of the historical bonds that you think of, whether they're gold-backed bonds from Germany, from Russia, from America, from Mexico, from China, it doesn't matter the country. The bonds were created as an offset asset for the gold that was received from this family. And they were holding those bonds privately. They were not for the public's consumption. In fact, many of the public didn't know they existed for many, many decades. And the only reason they ended up on the market was because some family members passed away before they had given instructions to their children about what their responsibility was with the collateral accounts for the world and what to do with these bonds, that there would be a day that the bonds would be handed back to the countries and they would be repaid in the gold that they had given. So none of that occurred, and thus started a very interesting last 20 plus years, okay, from 2001 until today. It took an enormous effort to regain control of government because of the fraudulent vote cheating that was going on, that had been going on for a long time. Those who have been watching recent events, such as the Venezuela incident, will know that Venezuela was, and Maduro was a very important asset to acquire. The reason I say asset is because Maduro has all the information on all the individuals in all the countries, over 70 plus nations, that have had their governments stolen through fraudulent elections using Venezuelan equipment. These vote tabulation machines were actually first designed and created under the former president Hugo Chavez so that he could stay into power. But the CIA was involved in helping to export that throughout the world. And we're going to find out that the CIA there's good people in there and then there's really bad people in there. And it was kind of doing whatever it wanted to do. And many times the good people didn't know what the bad people were doing and vice versa. So not everybody that's CIA is a bad person. I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea. But when corruption sets into any agency, and in this case, all of our government, from the federal down to the state, to the county, to the city level, this corruption is fueled and funneled by money. And they weren't interested in Nasara kicking in on 2001 because it required there to be a asset-backed currency backed by gold, silver, real assets of the country. And they could no longer print with impunity money. And they were using this endless money printing to pay off all the people that were corrupt. So the only way they could keep the corruption going is to continue the payments. Okay. So why does all this matter, and why does it tie into the RV? It ties in because the family that was supposed to have been repaid knows they're not getting repaid. They know the countries don't have it. They're all indebted to the Federal Reserve and other central banks that are partners with them throughout the world. It's 180 plus nations with this system. There are some countries that don't have a central bank, haven't had for some time. Those countries are Iran, Iraq. Currently today it does, but during the previous administration, Saddam Hussein, it did not have a Western central bank. I mean, one run by the Rothschilds. So Iraq, Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba. Do you hear any themes going on here? All these countries are being told to you that they're all enemies of the world. They're the bad guys. Okay. And this has been told to you because they're the holdouts that didn't sign on to the Rothschild central banking system. Not everything that goes on there, however, is benevolent, and you and I both know that. So many of these countries were actually being run via proxy through rogue agency individuals. So how do we get to the RV? How do we get to fixing all of this, these problems? This comes down to an incredible election that occurred in 2016 when the military helped Donald Trump get elected. And when I say helped, I mean they assisted with stopping some of the vote stealing that had been going on. They didn't stop all the vote stealing, but they stopped enough of it that he was elected. In 2020, we had another event, and this was the deep state's last hurrah to try to regain control from the rogue situation that occurred. You'll hear more about this election and how fraudulent it was in the coming days and weeks. Now that Maduro is captured, a lot of information is going to start pouring out about the truth of it. Not just 9/11, but other important dates like January 6th, the insurrection that wasn't an insurrection, etc. So you're going to be hearing more about this, and you're also going to learn towards the end of all of the drama that Donald Trump has been the president of the United States since 2016 until today. Now, I say that with a caveat. From January 2021 until January of 2025, he was not the president. However, he remained the commander-in-chief during that entirety. The reason for this is because the Joe Biden administration was a military operation. You're going to continue to hear how Joe Biden was terrible, he was derelict, he was all these terrible things, that he was incompetent on every level. The truth is, the real Joe Biden is all those things. But the person that played that part was an actor. The person that played Kamala was an actress. And it was a great show. And the show was designed to present to America and the rest of the world what corruption looks like when it runs wild. However, it didn't go completely wild. It was kept within reason. So even though we all were given the show of a lifetime, they still prevented us from completely falling off a cliff. Okay. So I know many don't want to hear about that or hear that we're all in a dramatization, but you're living through the greatest psyop ever conducted, the most elaborate and intense ever conducted by military. And we still have a little ways to go with that journey, which is leading us to the RV, Nasara, Jassara, that kind of thing. The challenge is that those terms, Nasara and Jassara, have been so maligned all over the internet, you will not hear our actual government mentioning these terms. However, you will see actions taken step by step to implement the statutes and principles of what that is. And we've been watching that throughout 25 particularly. And now we're in 26, it's really going to pick up speed because they are intent in getting all of this done no later than the 4th of July. So we've got less than 6 months now. When I say all of this, I mean there has to be a coalition of countries. Everybody needs to be on the same page. We need to have no war. There needs to be peace everywhere. And as you're seeing, there's still some skirmishes. We got Iran that's an issue, Ukraine that's an issue, Cuba, Colombia, there's still some issues to be cleaned up. There won't be an RV until all of this is done and the laws are passed that protect the new financial system that makes it possible for this to never happen again. The new financial system is blockchain, distributed ledger technology. And right now, in fact, on Thursday of this week, the Senate begins a markup of the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, in which they're going to be working on this bill. They received this bill from the House back in July of last year. They received 3 bills at the same time. They received the Genius Act, this Market Clarity Act, and they received the bill that there be no CBDC, all in the same day. They passed the Clarity Act and put off the other 2. Why'd they do that? They did that because it wasn't time yet to launch all of this, and they needed to wait until it's time. So when you see the issues in Iran ironed out, issues with Cuba, issues with Colombia, when you see the Market Clarity Act get passed, then you know we're going to be pretty darn close to the Treasury being able to actually issue new asset-backed currency. The RV assets, I don't care whether it's currency or it's historical bonds, are all meant to be paid in the new asset-backed currency. If we don't have that asset-backed currency, there's no way for us to be paid because this family and the patriots of the world in every country are not going to rebuild the world with debt. And our current system is debt-based. So we have a little ways to go. I do think the next 90 days are going to be some of the most dramatic that we've seen, particularly in the last 2 years. And a lot of that is sparked by the sudden rise of metals. If anyone's been watching the silver story, silver's breaking out for a variety of reasons. And those reasons tie in with exposing the fallacy of fiat currency. So silver becomes the big expose of the fallacy of fiat, but in the end, it will be gold that brings down the Fed. And that's done very simply. The Treasury Treasury will release a gold-backed or asset-backed currency. The moment they do that, fiat becomes absolutely worthless. But they're not quite ready for that yet. This is why the Fed is still operational. This is why the IRS hasn't been taken down yet. The IRS is owned, run, and controlled by the Federal Reserve. It is not a government agency. We are told it's a government agency, but there is no act of Congress that created the IRS. And you'll find similar things going on in other countries. It's always the central bank that owns the collection agency, and that collection agency collects from the people and gives the money to who? It doesn't go to the government. It goes to the Federal Reserve if you're in the United States. The Federal Reserve then sends that money, and I'm going to back up here. I'm saying this isn't exactly true today, but it was 5 years ago. Okay. The money would go offshore. A third of it went to the Crown of England. A third went to the Vatican, and the other third was divided up among the bankers as the spoils of war. In the United States, it meant $1 trillion was being sucked out of the economy every year, and none of it was being recirculated back in. If the money had gone to government recycles that money in the terms of payroll for the government employees and buying things for the use of the government. It gets recycled. So this has been interesting, particularly the United States, because the U.S. has been funding a lot of stuff around the world that we're finding now is very fraudulent. And the fraud, and, you know, some just call it, well, it's not really fraud. It's really just a misappropriation or some other term. It doesn't matter. It's fraud. Okay, let's just be honest. Like the USAID and et cetera. So I give all that as a bit of a background, open a discussion here, because we're all headed to a revaluation, and all of us are here because we have projects and things we want to do to bless the world. But we need those currencies, the new currencies released, not just America, but all the countries of the world are going to be doing this, going asset backed, so that we can be paid and begin that restoration process. I know it's taken a long time to get here. I've been on this road a long time, longer than maybe some of you. And believe me, 10 years ago, it was far more frustrating because we didn't even see the action that we see today. Today, we get to see all kinds of good things going on. You know, Maduro gets picked up. The U.S. launches a sovereign wealth fund. A lot of people don't understand the importance of that, but that is all part of implementing NESARA. Many of the steps taken throughout 2025, and we will see in 2026, are all about implementing those things that bring in a whole new world. So, there is money available for the RV. There's money for the bonds, for the currencies, or everything else, but it doesn't belong to the governments. It's actually privately funded. And the family that's funding this has made a very clear line in the sand that says you will implement NESARA JASAR or we will not move $1. So this is why the delay, if it appears a delay. It's not really been a delay at all. It's just been that we've been on a journey of trying to turn this ship around and get headed in the right direction where we can be aligned to receive the money. So I hope that gives a little bit of background for everybody. I don't have time to do all details, but my knowledge comes because I've spoken to family members and I heard it from their mouths what was required. And that's probably why the information that I share tends to be different than all the others. I know there's a lot of people reporting information, Restored Republic, you know, there's guys like the Bruce's Big Call and the TNT Tonys and the Judy Byingtons, et cetera, that share what they find. The problem is a lot of this information is coming from various channels. Some are on Telegram, some are otherwise, but social media. And what we all have to realize as patriots is that the enemy infiltrated all of our channels a long time ago. And they throw out misinformation and disinformation on purpose. And the reason for that is because they want you to feel like it's Thursday morning and you're going to wake up and your whole life has changed. But then when Thursday comes and it doesn't happen, you get deflated. You feel depressed. Oh my goodness, we missed it again. We're down. And the whole objective of this is to take your high vibration, your high energy, and to bring it down and put you in the gutter where they are. So it's important that we don't listen to the fake voices. We don't listen to people throwing nonsense out there. This won't happen through a Telegram chat. The RV won't be announced on any Telegram channel, and dates will not be given. I was specifically told, and I can't say who said this, but I've heard it from numerous people involved in it, that if somebody gives you a date, Will, you can dismiss them right now as a liar, because we don't give dates. What we do is we watch for accomplishments of the things that need to be done. And when we get to that point, the announcement will actually come directly from the president. He will make the announcement when it's ready and not a day before. And he will have all of his cabinet and all the support behind him when that occurs. So it won't be a mystery. It's not going to sneak up. You're not going to get a secret email to go to your bank next week, because everything the bank is holding right now is fiat. And you shouldn't take an asset-backed asset. I'm gonna call currency and bonds as assets here. The bonds are gold-backed. Okay, so you shouldn't receive a debt-based instrument, an IOU, in exchange for something that is gold-backed. You should get gold-backed money. And that's what we will get. So when you see the Treasury and the president announce a new currency, you know we are on the door of absolutely incredible things. And so I hope this is helpful for everybody here. Hope it's given just a little bit of a background, and I'm happy to take your questions.
So
Oh, that was amazing. You told us things I'm sure the majority of us have not heard, or heard but not in the way that you said it. And it is pretty amazing that you have direct contact, it sounds like, with the family that is funding the whole RV. And, you know, we have heard so many different things where the money's coming from, you know, these different trusts that are out there. It's going to be coming from that. We have to, you know, another thing, we have to wait till Iraq does whatever they're going to do. You know, everybody's focusing on Iraq, and maybe that's on purpose. Look here, and so you're not looking there. I don't know. But it almost sounds like what you're saying is that it's not a country or a specific event, but it is a list of requirements that have to be fulfilled in order for the money from this one family to be released. Am I
There you
hearing
go.
that correctly? Okay.
That's it. That's it exactly. And it's right in the tagline that Q used all the time. Where we go one, we go all. This means we're moving as humanity to this conclusion. Iraq doesn't go by itself. The United States doesn't go by itself. We don't go it alone. The world's going together. And some of the world isn't quite ready yet. We actually can visibly see this. Iraq was in a situation where their assets are more oil related than anything else. Okay. And oil is a sufficient asset to back currency. So this is good. This is fine. They can back it with oil. The challenge was they needed to be at a certain level of reserves in order to meet those numbers. Now you have some individuals like Phil Godlewski who occasionally gives a nugget out here and there. I'm not a follower of Phil, but I get some of the information occasionally. And he talked about the 17 trillion worth of oil reserves being held in Venezuela right now. And Venezuela has been captured by the U.S. The assets of Venezuela underneath Maduro have actually been seized under Executive Order 13848. And it has to do with interference in our elections by people outside the country. And their assets can be seized. And this has been ongoing for years. This is why the Rothschilds have had all of their accounts seized. One of the Rothschilds, the senior Rothschild, had 600 T in a personal account. That is enough to pay off the debts of every country around the world. Okay? Because it's been seized, all the debts are going to be cleared. So we don't have to worry about the debts, what the debts are. But we do have to worry about whether every country has their assets in place, where they have other things in place. You know, on the 23rd of December, Venezuela loaded cargo planes with silver. 847 tons of silver left Venezuela on December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. Most of it went to Russia and China. Why? First off, if you think the U.S. didn't know this was happening, you're wrong. The military and the president have been watching everything. But those two countries were on the edge of whether they had enough metal to back a new asset-backed currency as part of this reset. And so they were allowed to acquire it, and it moved. Shortly after, 2 days, well, a week later, we go in there and we take out Maduro and seize all the oil and the oil tankers. And those are going to be sold. As the president has said in an open press conference with oil people, we are open for business to the world. And that's for China and Russia and whoever else to buy. But what Phil was saying, and I don't have verification on oil to back this up, so I'm referring, you refer to Phil Godlewski if you're wondering. He's saying that a portion of that oil was meant to go to Iraq to finish their reserves so they also can RV. That makes sense to me because Iraq is an important player in what's about to take place. Many countries are. Venezuela is another big player. Why? Because Venezuela has been depressed currency-wise for decades. Ever since the, not Venezuela, excuse me, I meant Vietnam. Ever since the Vietnam War, their currency was depressed. Most people don't know this. Before the Vietnam War, the Vietnam currency was worth about $2.50 US. And then we went into a war. And we never concluded the war, but we eventually reached a ceasefire one day. Does anybody know why we got a ceasefire? We received a ceasefire because North Vietnam agreed to only sell oil and gas in US dollars. The entirety of that war was about defending the Federal Reserve note as the only currency of oil and gas. Why did we invade Iraq? Because for 6 months prior to the invasion, Saddam Hussein was selling all the oil in Iraq in euros and not US dollars. And he did this because he was so angry about us invading Afghanistan when he knew they didn't do 9/11. So just some background. So now we're in this situation where a lot of countries are getting prepped. They're getting ready to go. but we still have some skirmishes. We got some weirdness going on in South Africa. And this president is intent on we get it done no later than the birthday of the nation, 250th birthday, which is the 4th of July. I can tell you that with the skirmishes going on, whether it be South Africa, Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, you're going to see everything speed up really fast because President Trump is done waiting. He wants it done. And anybody that doesn't get ready, they don't get to revalue. They don't get to join the rest of the world. They will be left out in the cold. So this is why the wars, why has he settled 8.5 wars, as he calls it, or 8.25? Because he's put every nation on record. You settle this, you have peace, and you participate in the prosperity coming. You don't, you're over. So financial reasons are as much as anything else for why the peace is being achieved. And the tariffs, what he says about tariffs is absolutely true. The most prosperous time in the United States history was between 1850 and 1900. After the Federal Reserve got in, the prosperity changed forever. In fact, we went through a Great Depression in 1929 that was purposely executed by the bankers against the country. And the net result of that was the bankruptcy of 1933, which allowed the currency to be changed by the Federal Reserve. They reached an agreement with Roosevelt that he would hand over the gold and silver of the people, and the people were actually compelled to turn in all their gold and silver coins for fiat paper from the Federal Reserve. And this new fiat paper that they were given no longer said redeemable for gold or silver at any Federal Reserve bank. Instead, it had a new moniker on it. And now it said legal tender for all debts, public and private. So this was the move away from assets all the way back 1933. In 1945, after World War II, they reset the system again in the Bretton Woods Act. For those that understand Bretton Woods and what occurred there, they launched the UN. They launched the BIS, Bank of International Settlements. They launched the World Bank. All this after World War II. And this was supposed to help the world rebuild itself, which just further caused the hegemony that we have experienced. For those that don't understand, everything related to the banks has to do with corporations. And as you know, the word corporation comes from the word corpse. It means something that is dead. A living person is alive. A corporation is not a living person, therefore it's dead. It's the work of the dead. This is why the lawful system that we have, I call it lawfare, but the law that is executed by judges and everything, this is why they wear the black robes and they preside over their admiralty courts. And when you enter their courts, they operate under the law of the sea, admiralty law, rather than constitutional law. It's also why the bankers continued the corporate path. They started with their first corporation in 1871 called the U.S. government. And by 1971, 100 years later, they had corporatized all of government, all the states, and many of the counties, which allowed President Nixon to take us off the gold standard. And the reason that needed to happen was because in the late 60s, governors of many different states, the Dakotas, etc., were coming to the federal government and they were saying, look, the Constitution of our state, our sovereign state, says that we need to pay our bills in lawful money. However, we're using Federal Reserve notes to pay our bills, which are IOUs. We could be hung from the nearest light pole for treason against our own state. No problem, Governor. We have a solution for you. Let's create a corporation called the state of North Dakota, for instance, or the state of Missouri, or the state of California. California used to be called the Republic of California. Now it's the state of California. Well, the state of California is the corporate name. And most of these states were incorporated in a U.S. territory, not a U.S. state, the U.S. territory known as Puerto Rico. This allowed, once all the states were corporatized, and if you look at the constitutions of each state, you'll find a lot of them underwent major changes in the late 60s to early 1970s. And this was so that under the corporation, they could synchronize with the federal corporation and they could trade IOU notes back and forth. Okay. So we're undoing all of that. All that's being undone. The corporate world in the courts, the corporate world everywhere. So many asked me, well, I'm about to launch my projects. I thought I needed to set up a corporation. You don't. You can use what's been used for thousands of years, which is called a natural law private trust. And with that trust, you can operate as any other company does. It's the very reason why legislation that was passed in the early 1900s to prevent monopolies of large companies, they call it the antitrust law. Most people don't understand why it's called that, but it's called that because in the 1800s, all large business was actually run as a trust. That was the vehicle of the day. It wasn't until 1913 that the bankers started a marketing campaign to push corporations as the de facto vehicle to use for business. And they did this because dead entities, that was not a living person, are required to pay tax, income tax. You don't have a choice, no option. It's part of the benefits. Not a benefit, okay? But that's they called it this. Because you have the right to exist without being a living person, you need to pay tax. That's what they're saying. Now, this was very fascinating because if you read the tax law and you look at the 16th Amendment about income taxes and you read through the IRS code, which is the most convoluted thing you'll ever read, you start to realize that they never truly define who is taxable and who isn't. They just refer to the taxpayer. And this is important because they want everybody to pay them their tax, which doesn't go to your government. It's been going somewhere else. Now, that's how it was 5+ years ago. This is how it was before Donald Trump. Things are different today in the background, but you're not going to see that quite yet until the announcements are made. We don't send money to the crown anymore. That was ended in Donald Trump's first term. And the Vatican doesn't get it either. In fact, the Vatican was taken down in 2020 under the cover of COVID. In April of 2020, the troops went into the Vatican and arrested over 60 cardinals, the Pope, and they found all the records pertaining to the gold that was in the tunnel, 1,500-mile tunnel that stretched from Rome all the way to Israel. and 125 miles of this tunnel was stacked with gold. And they kept meticulous records of every country they took it from. So in April of 2020, we had a really interesting operation that was announced by our president called Operation Airbridge. And Airbridge was supposed to bring in protective equipment, personal protective equipment, masks, gloves, etc. And they were going to fly it in from all over the world to make sure the U.S. had what it needs. Operation Airbridge became the cover for what was known as distributing the gold back to every country it was retrieved from by the Vatican. This is why a lot of the countries of the world, and the U.S. included, is ready for revaluation because they now have their assets back. So we've been through a lot. All of you on this call have been through a lot. You've been living through the drama of COVID, the Biden administration, all this stuff. I hope this gives you a little bit of background, a little bit of understanding as to how all of this works together. And because it's important that we understand where we've come from so we never repeat this again. But as Q said, where we go one, we go all is true. The U.S. isn't going to go alone. We're all going to try to revalue together as best we can. Most countries will in the first round, not all, but most will be there. And it's going to forever change the world as the golden age begins. So thank you for your time tonight. I know I talked a little bit more than the questions, but I want to allow another 10 minutes, if it's okay, for some questions.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Thank you for that. I was going to just ask if anybody had any RV questions, but before you go, Will, I really would like for you to get into your humanitarian projects, your organization, if you can talk about that a little bit, if you have some more time.
I'll give you just the short version so that we leave some time for questions, okay?
Yep.
The short version is this. We are building a digital infrastructure. What I mean by that is large-scale data centers, private cloud system, all designed to operate companies, to operate humanitarian projects. This is designed specifically for the humanitarian projects coming in the golden age. It's going to take us, I was just on very extensive conversations today with our team. It's going to take us a few years for the full completion. However, we will have some services available within the first 12 months, which was actually good news to hear today. We're building out a system that allows for thousands of projects to start every single year all over the world, at least the countries that are compatible with NESARA. And we intend to be at this for many decades to come. If things go well, we do hope to be in well over 100 countries within the next 10 years, bringing these services forward. So what do? We take projects in, we help humanitarians get those projects ready. Do you have your business plan? Do you have your feasibility study? Do you have your performance? All the things that are needed to get funding. Then we help organize that funding. If you're coming to us for funds, I'm going to use that as an example for a second, then we have a process where it goes to a funding department, and there's a board there that overviews all the documentation and everything that's been assembled on the project. If they're pleased with that, then they will approve the funding. A new trust is created specific for that project. Funds are put into that trust for the completion of it, 100%. And then the trustee of that trust will disperse those funds according to the draw schedule of the project as it's built out. There's only one thing, actually two things, that are asked in return for somebody coming for money to do their project. We ask that if they have a product or a service, they make it freely available to the world, whether it be technology or whatever it is. Make it available. It doesn't have to be free. We don't want anybody to, just give stuff away and not have anything to show for it. You can charge, just make it available. Number one. Number two, we ask that you give back to help the next person with their project that's coming behind you. And that give back is called 10%. So you get funded 100%. You don't have to pay any money back. There's no payments. There's nothing to pay. You simply start your project and you become profitable on day one. We just ask that you take 10% of your profits, of your gains, and you contribute that back to the foundation so the next project behind you can also be blessed in a pay forward kind of process. So that's what we do. And our goal is to be in a situation where thousands of projects launch all across the world each and every year continually for the next 100 years. Hope that helps.
Yes, that would be absolutely wonderful. There's that subject there is another lot of misinformation flying around. You have to belong to this group, you got to belong to that group, you got to do this, you got to do that. And it's like, I can't think it's going to be that difficult, or it's got to be like that strict. That's what we're trying to get away from. So
there's no specific groups that are the sanctioned place that you have to do your project. I never tell anybody you've got to do your project with us or we need to help you or anything like this. However, some of the funds coming from bonds, particularly Zim bonds, have a project requirement. Those are large denomination bonds, and they do require projects. There's going to be some oversight in some of that money. They're going to want to know that the project's actually being done according as the person had said that it would be done. So don't be surprised when there's audits or reports that are required or things like that. This is normal and necessary. In fact, it's normal and necessary in any good business. And it's just about being sure that things are being done the way they should be. If a project comes through our organization, we do audits every year, and we have a separate auditing department that answers to nobody else in the organization so that they can remain impartial. But those reports come in every single year, and then every other year, we employ a third-party auditor to double-check that, and that's going to be Price Cooper Waterhouse, Ernst & Young, an outside source that verifies it. And because we know what's required, and we're going to have to give those reports to the authorities that are overseeing this. Most likely it's going to go through the Treasury, the U.S. Treasury, who will want to make sure that those projects are being done. So it's not that there's a really high bar necessarily, because I don't want people to get like overwhelmed by that. It's really just, is your project being done? Are you actually doing what you said you would do? Or is everybody just sipping margaritas on a beach? That's all they want to know.
Well, thank you for that information. And if it's all right with you, Will, we'll open it up for questions.
Absolutely.
Kurt, I think you were there. Go ahead.
all right, well, quickly, this YouTube fellow, the quote unquote Asian guy, that AI dude, he talks about the value of silver, and I don't know, I think a lot of it's smoke and mirrors, but I was under the impression that the COMEX was selling 100 contracts on each piece of silver, and this guy's kind of claiming it's right around 3 or 4. Do you have a comment on that?
There's a lot of talk about this guy's AI and what have you. I have done a little research on some of the information, and most has proven to be correct. what he's talking about is very interesting because it's bringing recognition to the fact that we have an inventory problem in regards to silver. And I've known this for a long time because we've been running deficits on the consumption of silver for the last 5 years. In other words, we use more than comes in. You can't run into your reserves for 5 years and not eventually run out of reserves. He's bringing attention to this. In many ways, some of us have joked that it's like, it almost looks like a white hat operation. Some guy sitting there with a computer creating these AI videos just to throw everything at the world. The silver is important. We need it for production of electronics and a lot of advanced technology materials. So there needs to be attention brought to it. And not just needs to be attention, there needs to be a price increase. Why? Because for the last 20 years, the price of silver has been so low that there is zero incentive for any mining company to get in the silver business to try to mine silver. I was talking with some people about these numbers and what it would take to actually get into the process of mining silver. And I was getting numbers of somewhere around $120 an ounce is that's kind of a magic number where mining companies can now say, you know what, it's now profitable to be in the silver business again. So where have we been getting silver if that's the case? Where we've been getting it is secondary. It's coming from copper mines, lead mines, gold mines. It's a secondary metal that's carved out in the refining process. So it wasn't the intent of the mine, but some product comes out of it. So that's where our current silver is coming from. So what silver's doing is it's drawing a big target on fiat. It's exposing the fallacy of what fiat is, that there's nothing behind it, and even the fallacy of the COMEX itself, because 5 years ago, there was 40 paper contracts to 1 ounce of silver. Okay. Today, there's 300 contracts to the same ounce of silver. Something's clearly wrong. Okay. So whether you like Asian guy, you don't like Asian guy, he's drawing attention to the very issue, and that is that we have a shortage of silver going on here. And it's not going to be rectified. In fact, the price of silver is going to keep climbing. Last week, Bank of America came out last Tuesday and said they were projecting an end price of silver by the end of 26 of possibly $309. Well, that's in an area where mining companies can get back in the silver business. The challenge with mining, if anybody's been dealt with this, and I did on a financial aspect when I was in banking, getting permits is not always easy. So it can take you anywhere from 7 to 9 years to get through the permitting process to actually operate a mine. This isn't going to work when you're sitting on a strategic asset, as the president has called it. To what are you going to do? If silver is so important, and it is, how are we going to get more of this? So it was a month ago, the president made silver a strategic asset and metal for the country. This allows him to bypass the permitting process, to fast track mining operations, and to get things going quickly. So there's a lot of moves being made right now in silver. In the short term, it's going to remain high until inventories come back into line. China has cut off all exports of silver as of the 1st of January, and that is affecting the price. In fact, the price of silver inside China is $12 higher than the spot price here in America. So that tells you what's going on. So my opinion on the Asian guy is, it doesn't matter if he's fake or not. The things he's bringing to light are still relevant to me. And so I don't care if he's AI. I don't care if it's a military guy running it. The truth of the matter is, somebody did deep investigation and is sharing information that is relevant. Doesn't mean that it's an actual guy and, you know, he's the end all be all. I never put my eggs all in one basket like that. But good question about him. I do think that if you're not paying attention to what's going on with silver, you're missing the story, because silver will be the expose of fiat and gold will end it. Hope that helps.
Hi there. Will, really appreciate that. I'm OGS 58. Jim is my name.
Okay. Hi, Jim.
Very hello. Very informative. Number one. Number two, I've been quite on top of a lot of all of this, but there are obviously this new information as far as the revaluation. My question comes in two parts, and it has to do with upon, let's say, okay, I hold Zim. I also hold some agro checks. One being obviously monies, and the other being the bonds. Now, do I have to have a project on the Zim? The thing is, I'm not that guy that has, I know what I want. I mean, I want to run an organic farm school, homeschool, training center, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But I don't have all of everything laid out. Is there others that have that? And it's sort of like, hey, you've heard of angel investors, correct? The term?
Oh yes. Been involved in that for many years.
10-4. Can I be along those lines then? And be that in another project that has similar wants?
You can be. In fact, this question comes to me actually quite often. I had somebody ask just last week. They said, look, I have acquired these assets. Some of them I'm told I need to have a project requirement. What do I do if I don't have my projects fleshed out? If you have a summary of what it is you want to do, they'll give you 90 days to work on the details. Okay, they'll give you some time. And you can do that. There are great resources online. There's companies like liveplan.com that has a great, they use AI along with other technology, but they've got a great system for creating business plans. So you can use stuff like that to kind of get your stuff ironed out. Or you can designate as a placeholder some other organization that's already doing something. You could say, I want to contribute to Enoch Global Services. Now, you don't have to contribute anything or not contribute it, but it gives you a placeholder while you get your ducks in a row, if that's what you're looking for. We have hundreds of projects of our own, and there are thousands more that we haven't yet cataloged, and it's not that they're not out there. They're just, I've purposely told people, close the door. Until I get more staff, I can't handle the influx. Okay. So it's not that there's a lack of projects or things to do, Jim. It might just be that you just need a little time to kind of get yourselves together and figure out what things are important to you and what things are not important. I had one person come to me and said, you know what? My heart says I want to do first-time home buyer homes, and I want to help single family mothers, single parent household where mom's trying to run the house, and I want to help these families. Can you guys help me with that? course, the answer is yes, we can do that. And I says, are you wanting to fund it? You just need us to help you with the project side of it? And I said, yeah. Okay. Well, in that case, we would assign one of our people to it. We'd put together the business plan. We have to headhunt an executive team. We put together a CEO and people to run the business, all the things that's necessary. Because I'm going to do a podcast on this probably within the next 30 days. Because the question of projects seems ambiguous to people. They don't know what it means. But let's be real simple about it on this call to make it easy for everybody. A project is nothing more than a business. Now, some projects don't really make money because maybe they're purely just to help society. A school, for instance, for children, it's not really going to have a product to sell, right? It's educating the children. The children are going to be productive later. So that is what we call a true nonprofit type of project. But most projects have the capability to earn interest, earn some upside, have a product or service if they just think about it a little bit. Like I had somebody that wanted to do a private school project in Montana, and they wanted to do this incredible art center that would allow anybody that was homeschooled to participate. I mean, really take in a big audience. But they were trying to figure, I don't see how this thing can make any money. I says, what age are your kids? They said, well, all the way through high school. And I said, well, younger kids, obviously, you can't have them working. I says, but when you get to high school age kids, there's things they can do. Most kids in high school start their first job. And I said, there's things they can do. So are you going to have I'm going to use this as an example, Jim, but are you going to have a refreshments counter where you sell popcorn and candy and stuff at your performing arts center? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's a profit center. The people that work there, they may be high schoolers, but you can pay them, right? They can earn some money. They can learn about commerce and how that works. And as he began to look at this, and other uses that they could use the buildings for, they realized they could create income, that there were other sources and services they could provide the community. They could rent out some of the facilities for business meetings, which would provide income. And he says, I'm so glad I talked to you because I didn't realize we could do this. The reality is people think that humanitarian means nonprofit. And nothing could be further from the truth. Humanitarian is anything that creates a job and keeps that job long term. We personally at Enoch Global Services, we have a great appreciation for things like schools. We need to help our youth, and we allocate some of our resources for that. But the majority of everything that we do is we're looking for projects that create profit. Because when we create a job, we want to keep that job for the next 30 years. And the way to do that is to have an income that keeps that job going. And because whoever that person is, their family's going to now be dependent on that income and their future. So I hope this is helpful a little bit, Jim. You don't need to have all your projects, but if you know what you want to do, you can create a one-page summary, and that's sufficient for your redemption appointment. And they'll give you 90 days to get the rest of it fleshed out as you need. I hope that helps.
Dude, that's absolutely awesome, and it's very doable. I could absolutely put a proposal and run it together with no problem. That would make complete sense, profitable and everything. Don't want to hog anything, but my second question goes directly to you, specific as a banker. I'm making a move. I'm moving away from my bank. I need another one. And I asked a question to a family member earlier, and her suggestion was awesome. Yeah, try to stay within a credit union situation, but I have a Wells Fargo opportunity as well. Now, with everything going on with the banks and who's up to whatnot, and I don't trust BOA at all. where do I want to lean toward?
Well, I'll tell you what, you're going to be delivered money from the RV through blockchain. It's going to go into a digital wallet. The only way for that money to get to a bank is for you to do that transfer. So most people are going to hold most of their money not in a bank, but in a digital wallet on the QFS. That being said, if you've got a bank, and Wells Fargo is one of those that has a private bank division, and they've got Abbott and Downing that does all of their stock trades and everything else. So if you like their services, you can utilize their service, but you don't have to put all your eggs in that basket. You can leave most of your wealth. Anything you leave in your digital wallet that's on the QFS account, and by the way, they're not available, so don't anybody listen to somebody trying to sell you a QFS account. It's not available. You'll get it when you go to redemption appointment, but not before. Okay, so don't be scammed by anybody. But in that is you'll hold it, and the only person that knows what you have is you, or maybe the redemption center that sent it to you. That's it. Banks can't see it. They don't know what you have. The only time they can participate with you is if you send money to that bank. Now, in the future, I do think that most banking, per se, as we understand it, is probably going to be more credit union focused. The U.S. debt clock had an image a month ago showing that there would be credit unions in all 50 states that would participate in what's coming, and that they would be the primary givers of home loans, car loans, credit cards, business loans, etc. And guess what? The interest that's charged by the credit unions, which is at 1% to 3% range, the interest on all of that activity is actually going to be used to supplement, that's not the word, replace property taxes. So there won't be property taxes in the future, and it'll come from the interest activity of these banking institutions, primarily going to be credit union. That being said, I don't tell anybody to shy away from a major bank. I've dealt with all the majors at one time or another. I've worked for some of them, and I have problems with all of them. So it's really interesting question that you ask. I don't give any recommendations of banks. That being said, some are ahead of the curve and others maybe not so much. And I'll give you one example. 2 years ago, I was opening a trust account and I went to Chase Bank. I'll tell you what bank it is. And they said, let us run this through our compliance department. We'll get back to you and let you know if we can do it. So they get back to me 48 hours later and they say, this is fantastic. We can get everything set up for you. When can you come in? I said, I'll come in on Thursday afternoon. So I go in there and they have a private bank division available for me. They have the local head of JP Morgan to talk about investments. And the branch manager had already set up the account. All he had to do was come sign. They rolled out the red carpet. Okay. They were so excited. Private banking, the whole 9 yards. A week goes by, maybe 10 days, and I get a call from the private banker. And he says, hey, there's been an issue. I don't know what it is. Compliance has notified me that they're closing your account down in 10 days. And I said, what's the reason? They didn't give me one. I don't know. Now, I know what the reason was. The reason was they found my videos online. They didn't like what I was saying. Okay. That's the truth of the matter. But they shut it down. So what do? I'm like, well, I need to go to another bank. And I talked to my trust writer that wrote my trust. And I said, hey, do you know any other banks? He says, oh yeah, this bank seems to be opening these all the time. And I said, okay. So I go to that bank, a bank out of Oklahoma called Old Glory Bank. Not a very old bank. They got started after the 2020 COVID thing, when everybody was being debanked and deplatformed if they spoke out against anything, against the narrative of COVID. And it was started by a group of patriots that had been debanked, right? It's like, perfect. This is my kind of bank, you know? I've been there too. So I go and talk to them. They open the bank up. And about a month, and maybe it was a month and a half ago, they invite me to a private showing webinar, which was very kind of them, of what's coming for their bank. And in this webinar, they outlined everything that's going to launch here in February, also next month. And they are integrating blockchain into everything with their bank. You can purchase crypto right from the app on your phone. You can sell crypto back to them or in the marketplace. You can get a loan from the bank against your crypto. Or if you're holding metals, they have vault services and you could hold the metals there and borrow against it. I don't know any other bank that is running headlong into the future like that bank. I don't know any of them that are doing this. In fact, I've had Chase refuse me to buy cryptocurrency. Would not let the transaction go through, even if I called them and told them to authorize it. So some banks, and I just gave you an example, Chase, are holding on to the power they've had and it's slipping out of their hands. And you have other banks like Old Glory Bank, who's running headlong into the future saying, if that's the future, we're going to do it. And so you're going to have choices that'll come to you to pick the bank that you want to pick. I hope that you choose wisely. Banks are, there is FDIC backing, but only to 250,000. So it's really about what you want to do. Me personally, most of my money is going to stay in the QFS digital wallet because I already know how to invest it and grow it. So I don't really need help in that regards, but I'm not the normal guy. So choose the one bank that you feel most comfortable with. I do think when it comes to the people that just want a checking account because it's all they've ever known and they're 90 years old and they just can't change, they're going to hold on. They're going to clench to a credit union probably most likely, or maybe even the bank they have now. But within the next 5 years, you'll probably see 80% of banks just go away. Because when people realize they can receive money and they can send money directly from their digital wallet without going through a bank whatsoever, they're going to find it's just easier and there's no fees and it works 24/7 any day of the week. I hope that helps.
Beyond like thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have a question?
Will, I gather you are crypto savvy?
Yes, I participate in crypto. I've made money, I've lost money. Like everybody else.
I've held 10,000 XDC or XLM for about 5 years now in a cold storage. And I'm not just sure yet where and how to, I don't even want to touch it. I'm so afraid to even open it as far as getting into my my code words. You know what I'm saying? I don't want it. Yeah. Okay. So anyhow,
Well,
when that moment, go ahead. I'm
the
sorry.
challenge in crypto has been that we don't have legislation that regulates it. Okay. And because of this, it's been a bit of a Wild West. And in fact, I probably lost some 20 grand in various people that were trying to run scams, right? And I can't really hold them accountable because there isn't law in the books. This is what the market Clarity Act is all about. It puts the same level of control and regulation that you enjoy with your bank account today into crypto. So important. So crypto is going to be everything in the future. We've had Larry Summers, the head of the SEC, has come out and said he expects over the next 12 to 24 months for all of the stock market to be blockchain, to everything going on chain and to being tokenized. So that tells you that's the future. We just want a future that's protected and safe. And that's why I think these bills like the Senate is working on here on Thursday is vitally important. I don't expect there to be an RV until we have real law in place, like this law, to protect the consumer. I don't expect the Treasury to issue that new currency until that occurs. So there's some good things underway right now. Hope that helps.
Patience is a virtue.
Yep, it sure is. And just don't strangle the person next to you while you're waiting.
God grant me patience, but I want it now.
We got any other questions?
Lazarus. If you're talking, we can't hear you. You might have to go out and come back in.
Maybe it's muted.
Oh, her mic's open, but we're not
Oh,
hearing
okay.
anything if she's talking. There you go. Hit your speaker button, Lazarus.
Yeah, still can't hear anything. So maybe there's a mic issue on their end. Anybody else while we're waiting? I know we're planning on an hour, but I'm willing to go to quarter to the hour, which is 10 minutes.
Well, since we're talking about crypto right now, there's been a lot of put your crypto on this wallet. Oh my God, no, get it back off of that wallet. Okay, put it over in this. Oh, no, don't use your phone. Put it on your computer. It is so confusing for people that are still trying to figure this out, and even for ones that have somewhat of an idea. And quite honestly, I don't really trust any of the wallets, even the biometric ones. It won't even, sometimes it doesn't even recognize my fingerprint. And it's like, oh no. So honestly, for me, I don't have that much. I had it on Exodus, pulled it back off and put it back over on Coinbase. It's like, I have no idea what to do right now. And it's like, okay, I'm just putting it there for right now.
There's a lot of people that have had issues with a lot of different exchanges. Binance, Coinbase, Lobster, Gemini, whatever, take your pick. I've heard horror stories about all of them. I have experience with some of them actually doing some really funny business. I personally do everything through a cold wallet. I don't let them have control of the keys. What's important about crypto is to understand that you never really hold your crypto. Okay. The crypto technically is on the ledger. What you have control of is the keys that allow you to do something with that crypto, to buy it, sell it, trade it, whatever. And the exchanges like Coinbase, they hold the keys, and then they give you a software interface that shows you have X amount there. I know somebody, and maybe I shouldn't use them as an example, but this is the example. They had XRP, for instance, on Coinbase, and they had recently purchased a hardware wallet, and they wanted to transfer it over to the hardware wallet, and Coinbase wouldn't let them do it. And they said, "No, you can't do that. Your XRP is locked up. You won't get access to it for." It was almost 90 days. And this person called me and said, "What do I do?" I said, "Well, the truth is they're trading your XRP in the background, and they don't want you to know that, but because they have the keys, they can do it whenever they want to, because they hold the keys. Technically, it looks as if they own it." Okay. That's how it looks on the ledger. And they said, "What? But I own it." I'm like, I know you own it and you paid for it, but on the ledger, they hold the keys, so they're the owner. "Well, I don't want that." And I said, "Then call them up, threaten to sue them, and see what happens." And so this person did that, and within 10 minutes had all their XRP. I'm not saying that everybody's experience with Coinbase is a bad one, because I've heard a lot of good experiences too. Okay. That's just one experience from somebody that I personally know. But it doesn't matter the exchange. All the exchanges were doing the same thing. In other words, because crypto is a wild west, there's not really regulation. Congress hasn't passed laws about it. Then it's allowed them to kind of do whatever they want to do. And so many of the exchanges have behaved even more inappropriately than the banks themselves. Even though I was witness to a lot of crazy stuff in banks, the crypto land's even worse because nobody can hold them accountable. Now, what happens if we get legislation? If we get legislation where we've got rules of the road, then many of these exchanges are going to be audited. It could be as much as monthly, but there's going to be regular audits. They're going to have to answer to the regulatory authority. In this case, it's probably going to go through the Treasury. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here in the future. I think it's going to be a whole lot better to be in crypto land once that legislation is passed. The only legislation we have right now is the Genius Act that is passed and signed by the president, so it's in law. And the Genius Act only covers stablecoin. Stablecoin is basically digital dollars on the blockchain. So anything that isn't the digital dollars is everything else, and that's why we need this bill passed by the Senate. So hope that helps a little bit.
Yep. Just going to stay where it's at right now, because I think it would be, you're just flipping a coin this day. They, whoever they are, might scam you and take your money, and maybe that might not ever happen. And unfortunately, like you said, until there's regulations and laws in place, we're just playing Russian roulette.
Yep. Unfortunately, that's what happens. And when it comes to blockchain, the moment you send a token or many tokens, but when you send it to an address, it's gone. There's no pulling it back. Right? There it is. And if that person is not moral or is not going to honor their word, then you're stuck with whatever happens. So I think crypto is the future. I know that blockchain and tokenization, anything of value, cars, homes, everything, I think are going to eventually be a token on the system. So it's all going to be good. It's just a little in the early stages right now, and we don't really have laws that give us some bite to that. Now, there's a lot of countries working on legislation and regulation for crypto. Europe's working on it. In fact, many ways they're ahead of the US in that regard. But I think that the US is trying to get it right the first time, even though we're not the first. They're trying to get it right, make it right, where America will be the crypto capital of the world. And I do think that that'll happen in the very near future.
Thank you for that.
Will, can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you.
Hi, Will. This is hey everybody. This is Ginger, not GLLL Ginger either. I was wanted to ask you and see what you could tell me about having the projects approved and approval, so you know kind of a little bit about where I'm at and what I'm working on. And I know that I've heard before that they're going to want us to take some time off, 3 months, 6 months, and that kind of a thing. What are we allowed to do during that time? And
You can do
does the
anything you want to do on your project technically. The reason that you want people to just take it easy and breathe is because what we've all been through for the last many years. They want everybody to just rest and feel like they're ready to go when they launch this. The 90 days is going to be pretty strict in regards to NDAs. And ultimately, it's not project related. It's about discussing where the money came from that you're utilizing. So they want people to kind of continue to live their lives, continue to look a little bit normal for the next 90 days, because that's the process in which everybody is being taken care of. The redemption isn't just for people that have the RV. The redemption process is for every adult in America and the world, where they would go and they would represent who they are. They would bring their ID to validate who they are. And only after they're validated, then do they receive what's coming to them. But there's two things, technically three parts to the redemption process. The first part is restitution. That's restoring to you what was taken from you. Things like income tax. You paid, $200,000 throughout the course of your lifetime in income tax. Well, it's coming back. It's being restored to you. Okay, that's one. Next, we have reparations. Reparations are things that was done to you that maybe you didn't even know about, such as your birth certificate, where they were trading your birth certificate for their benefit to make millions of dollars. Okay. That's reparations. Everybody, whether you know anything about the RV or not, will be able to participate in those two things. The third thing is the redemption of bonds and currency, and that's where the RV comes in. So what'll happen is the public will generally go in to validate what's coming to them, and they'll be, listen, there's going to be announcements about this, so it's not like anybody's going to not know. So everyone will go in to get what's coming to them. They get all their income tax money back in a big lump sum. Everybody's going to be so excited. They're going to suddenly have extra money. They get reparations for their birth certificate, and many of them don't even know about that, okay? But they're going to be blessed by it. And then you're going to have the person next to you, if let's say you're the average Joe that doesn't know anything, and they're an RV person, but they can't talk to you about what they have. They just simply do their thing. And obviously those that know about the RV and have the assets to RV come out of this much better than everybody else. But how long does it take to process all the adults in America? You know, there's 340 million in population, or 341, whatever the number is exactly. But, you know, a bulk of those are adults. You know, maybe there's, 60 million children, the rest are adults. So you have a lot of people to process. You're not going to do it all in one day. You're not going to do it all in a week. It could take you 90 days to get everybody done. This is why they want everybody to be quiet. They want everybody to be chill, go on vacation, rest from all that's been done to you, use the little bit of money that you got from the RV and go sit on a beach. And I think it's a good idea. People ask me, like, what should I do for this 90 days? I'm like, I don't know. Go to the place that makes you happy. Up in the mountains, go to the beach, go to a lake, go to the place where you feel peace and stay there until you're so freaking bored of feeling peace that you're ready to do something, and then come home and do your project. That being said, keep in mind those with Zim bonds and other things that are very high denominations, you may be under a strict NDA for years. In other words, you may not be able to talk about where the money comes from for an extended period of time. Doesn't mean you can't talk about your project, doesn't mean you can't communicate with people about hiring them to do your project or anything like that. It's just that you can't talk about where the money comes from. And that's so that the people that didn't know anything about the RV don't find out about the RV later and then are ticked off and want to rebel against their government because they didn't know. You can't please everybody. So the NDAs are there for your safety and everyone else's, honestly.
Okay.
But they will tell you, if you violate this, there will be consequences. So money may be clawed back.
Right.
So
So
when we
I
get
feel
on,
more-
even though we have conversations like this right now, Ginger, when we get on the
Mhm.
other side of this, I won't be able to have this
Mhm.
conversation anymore.
Right.
Right? So we're having
Plus, I
it
need
now.
to talk to you now. I definitely want to participate in your call next month. It'll be more in line of questions that I have. But one thought is, I'm not going to tell anybody anything. My children know a little bit about it, but amounts and details and anything after that is none of anybody's business. And I heard you mention that we most likely would be somewhat overseen or working with the Treasury, but I'm curious, Will, how long does it take, and who will notify us if our project is worthy and approved?
Any good project, you're gonna take your summary of what you want to do to your redemption appointment. That's the information they're gonna have to go from. So they might follow up with you later and say,
Mhm.
how is your projects going? That could happen, but they're not going to know what you want to do until you tell them, right? That's the
Mhm.
whole point of that. But the reality is most of the RV money, I'm not talking about the other stuff, but the RV money itself is going to likely be distributed in US funds. And therefore, that oversight is probably going to be on a treasury level. And it's not that it's not a super high bar necessarily. It's really just, are you doing what you said you would do? That's what they want to know.
Okay. And I'll just share this, that you said go to our happy place for 90 days. My project is where my happy place is at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So
then go
anyway,
to your next happiest place and
right.
plan your project.
All right. I'll look forward to speaking with you next or listening to you next month, Will. And I really appreciate all the details and the information today. You're a very wise man. Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope it's helpful. Well, it's been wonderful to be with you tonight. Thank you for the invite. And I know you've recorded this, so hopefully there'll be many other people who get to a chance to participate with the information. We are staying very busy. I'm on a podcast tomorrow with Brilliance in Commerce that is all about trusts, natural law trusts, and we'll be speaking about those. And then Thursday, I have a podcast of my own that I do every Thursday, the Global Update. We'll be talking about things that are coming. There's still some things up in the air about Thursday, so I'm not going to announce the title of it yet. But then next week, our Global Update will be done live on Zoom with Brilliance in Commerce, but we'll also be on with John Michael Chambers next, not tomorrow, but the following Wednesday. And then on the 29th of January, we have a special Q&A session we're doing for 1 hour with me and John Michael Chambers. Ask your questions. So you'll go to his website to register for that and to be able to ask your questions. So we have a lot going on, and I think next week is also Holly Ciliano. So you'll see a little bit more from me coming up here in the near future, and I hope it's helpful for everyone.
Well,
Tomorrow, your trust thing, what channel is that going to be?
It's actually done by a Zoom link. Let me hang on a second. Let me look and see if they even got me the link yet.
Sorry, Des, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, you could
Yeah, because if it's here, I'm happy to put it in the chat. Let me see here.
You could just send it to me and I can post everything, because I was going to post your Enoch GS, that link and everything also, where people can contact you.
I do not have the link yet for that Zoom tomorrow. It's at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and it generally runs about an hour and a half. And I will be on there. The head of Brilliance in Commerce is usually on, and we will have Bradley will be joining us, who is the trust writer that actually writes these things. And of course, he's a wealth of information, personal friend of mine, great guy. And he's an expat from the UK, the incredible British accent. You'll love him. And also just a great husband and father, nice family. But why don't we do this? I will email Desiree, I'll email you the link, the Zoom link, and then maybe you can share it with everybody. Can we do that?
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Okay, perfect.
And one last thing from me and from everybody here. If you ever get to see the family again, as you have noted, the family that is so graciously funding this RV, please tell them from the bottom of all of our hearts how much we appreciate it.
I will do that. I will certainly pass that on if and when that opportunity comes up. I do hope it does come up again. First experience was fantastic, and I will certainly express the gratitude from all of you.
Thank you so much, Will, for coming on. Much appreciated.
You're welcome. Go bless the world. Have fun doing it.
And you, thank you. Peace, sir. Thank you kindly.
You're most welcome. We'll see you next time.
Anyway, thanks for listening.